Welcome to Kaumudy Global. The Indian Navy is reportedly keen on forging an inter-governmental agreement, IGA, with the US or France to procure 26 fighter jets for its indigenous aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant, scheduled for imminent commissioning despite awaiting installation of its Aviation Flight Complex, which is necessary for its operating its combat air arm. Boeing's A18 E Super Hornet and Dassault's Rafale-M fighters are in contention for the Navy's requirement for 18 multi-role carrier borne fighters and 8 twin-seat trainers to operate off Vikrant. These requirements could eventually rise to a total of 57 platforms in keeping with the Navy's earlier projections. Both the US and the French fighters had recently demonstrated their operational capabilities from the shore-based test facility at INS Hansa, the Navy's air station in Goa. The Navy is currently evaluating their performances to determine their suitability, following which it will begin the formal tendering process to acquire the aircraft, possibly via an IGA or some other analogous arrangement for a variety of reasons. What comes closest to an IGA for the US government are tenders concluded exclusively through its foreign military sales program, which is administered by the Defense Security Cooperation Agency under the Pentagon's overall aegis and advertisement by US State Department as a means for furthering Washington's diplomatic and strategic ambit worldwide. India's Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020 and the manuals that preceded it permits acquisition both via the IGA and the FMS on grounds of securing geostrategic advantage or imperatives of strategic partnerships or both. Military, technological, economic, diplomatic, and political benefits too are principal factors for New Delhi forging such agreements for its military buys. As a matter of fact, IGAs and their variants like the FMS have been Delhi's favored mode of importing major military platforms and diverse weapon systems for several years. All procurements from the former Soviet Union and subsequently Russia since the mid-1960s have followed the IGA route, with India's Ministry of Defense dealing directly with ROE, Moscow's sole state agency for material export and import of dual-use defense products, technologies, and services. For decades, this arrangement worked well, despite periodic glitches, and was solely responsible for effectively building India's arsenal and augmenting its war-waging capability. The bulk of US defense acquisitions 2002 onwards, worth around $20 billion, to have been via the FMS route, and more recently in 2016, the Indian Air Force acquired 36 French Dassault Rafale fighters via an IGA, deliveries of which are nearing completion. The MoD officials as well as the armed forces are comfortable adopting the IGA template, especially the FMS, for diverse reasons, of which expediency is a foremost. Ironically, even for them, the DAP 2020 and all its earlier manifestations has always been far too convoluted in its processes, rendering them wary of taking decisions in the event of something going awry. Many corruption scandals in recent years involving MoD and military officials, some of which remain unproven, have centered on their questionable interpretation of the complex procurement regulations. Pursuing the IGA route obviates such possibilities. The IGAs are also not required to follow standard multi-stage acquisition procedures or conform to the rigid contractual conditions envisaged in the DAP. Instead, they are negotiated on mutually agreed terms between the governments of both countries, allowing a greater degree of flexibility in finalizing the deals and their eventual execution. This compressed IGA and FMS procedure typically begins with the approval of the broad framework for the proposed agreement by the MoD's Defense Acquisition Council, headed by the Defense Minister. It is followed by negotiations between the foreign governmental agency and an MoD-appointed interdisciplinary committee, which determines the overall terms and conditions of the purchase, including the cost, delivery schedules, maintenance support package, and any possible transfer of technology for local manufacture. Once the draft terms and conditions of the purchase are mutually accepted, the IGA is signed with the approval of the Cabinet Committee on Security headed by the Indian Prime Minister. In almost all instances, an IGA compresses the total period for finalizing a contract from the time the proposal was initiated to when it is finally inked. The purchase of 36 Rafales, for example, was first announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Paris in April 2015, and the Rs 59,000 crore contract for them was signed via an IGA 17 months later in September 2016, followed by commencement of deliveries in July 2020. India's FM's purchases have included 22 Apache Guardian and 15 Chinook heavy-lift helicopters for the IAF, 14 Neptune long-range maritime multi-mission aircraft, and 24 Lockheed Martin Sikorsky MH-60R multi-role naval helicopters for the Indian Navy. 6 additional Apaches were on order for the Indian Army, while the IAF had also commissioned 12 Lockheed Martin and 11 Boeing Globemaster III transport aircraft. To conclude, the IGA or FMS contracts provide psychological comfort to MoD's civil and military bureaucracy, as the responsibility for procurement deals concluded under it is borne collectively by the empowered committee on the Indian side and the concerned government or its agency like the DSCA on the other. This minimizes the risk for the officials of being questioned subsequently for their decisions and facing allegations of committing irregularities in the acquisition process, which in recent times has been the bane of efficient decision-making and one that has adversely impacted the Indian military's long-delayed modernization. This is Anjana signing off. Do like and share this video. For further updates, subscribe to Kaumudy Global.